Welcome to the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wall. I'm an RDH and founder of Inspired Hygiene. For over 20 years, we've had the unique opportunity to see what really happens inside thousands of dental hygiene ops and what it takes to create transformational change that impacts the lives of patients, practice owners, and teams. Each season, we'll focus on one powerful topic, breaking it down with practical strategies, real stories, and tools you can use right away. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 1 of the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. Man, I have been thinking about doing this for years, and I've heard so much conflicting advice. I've heard it's a big time suck, don't do it. And then I've also heard, hey, Inspired Hygiene has so much to offer you. Why don't you guys have a podcast? I've really enjoyed being a guest on podcasts over the years. I've had the pleasure of being on many dental podcasts, and we'll continue to do that. And now it's time to create something of our own. So I'm just excited to get this started. And as I was prepping for this first episode, I feel like there's a lot riding on this. It's kind of like a first date. If it sucks, are you going to come back? Are you going to listen? Are you going to tell your friends? So my initial plan was to have this first episode just really be an intro, tell you a little bit about myself and Inspired Hygiene, why I decided to start Inspired Hygiene, kind of what that story is. But what I realized after I thought about it is, based on where we are in the industry right now, that felt very self-serving. And so that can wait. We will get to that. But that can wait. I wanted to make sure that I address some of the things that are probably on your mind. And what I'm thinking is on your list of to-dos for today or this week or this month is probably not, learn more about Rachel Wall. It's probably some of the other things that so many of our colleagues are really facing right now that are pretty urgent. So I know you have some of those much more urgent things on your mind right now, and I would love to just get right into it. In this first season of the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. So if you're a practice owner, a practice manager, a hygiene director, a leader, in dentistry, what might be on your mind today, or again, this week or this month is probably something like this. You need to write and post a job ad for a hygienist. You need to screen candidates. Interview candidates, pray for candidates. You might be wondering, should we change our hygiene comp plan to make us more competitive? We're hearing that a lot from our clients. You might be wondering, how do I get patients into hygiene for the care that they need when we're booked out 5 months and we don't have capacity to add more hygiene days, or we've been trying to hire for months and we can't find anybody? The other thing that I hear a lot that's on your minds is how do I get our hygienists to see the big picture and be open to change, be open to a new model of hygiene, or at least open to expanding what we're offering. And then one thing that we hear a lot from practice owners that's likely on your mind is, will my hygiene department ever be profitable again, right? With the new level of wages that are there and, reduction in insurance reimbursement, or just generally, increasing costs. That's a big question that's out there now. And if you're a hygienist, maybe what's on your mind today is, maybe you're saying to yourself, I'm making great money, but I'm tired of temping. It's the flexibility is great. But, going in and out of offices and not knowing what to count on. And, in many practices, there's not a clear protocol for when to move patients from a prophy into therapy. That can get really taxing over time. I've done that in the past. Some of you, if you're hygienists listening, you might feel like hygiene has become a bit of a drag. But the reality is the money's really good right now and you need to stay in it. But is there a way to revitalize your energy for dental hygiene? You might also have on your mind, are dental assistants going to take over the hygienist jobs? There's so much swirling right now that it's hard to think straight, regardless of your role. And I talk to dental team members, talk to practice owners, talk to other dental industry leaders pretty much on a daily basis, and we are all feeling this way. So you're not alone, first and foremost. And what I'm observing is that a lot of you, regardless again of your role, are making some knee-jerk reactions or knee-jerk decisions that are not going to serve you, not going to serve your patients or your practice or the industry for that matter for the long term. Now, that being said, there's a great deal of understandable urgency for dental practice owners right now, right? There's a lot at stake, and we're going to get into some of that. So in this episode, let's start to peel back a few layers of this onion, because there are so many layers that got us where we are today. And there are so many layers that we'll have to address in order to get into a better place. And many of you have already started that in your individual practices and in your careers. But let's start to peel back a few of those layers and take a bit of a reality check. And my goal is to give you some hope and a little inspiration, along with a little tough love, just from, my perspective. So today, on this episode, it's me and you. In the next few episodes, I'm going to invite some of our Inspired Hygiene team to join and share their perspective on some of these hot topics. And we'll have guests that come in from time to time. And my hope is to always give you some things to think about, give you some action steps that'll move you a little closer to optimizing your hygiene department in whatever way you're striving for, and in a way that really creates a win for your patients that you serve, for the providers on your team, and for the practice as whole. So why are we in this unique position to share and have this podcast? I'm not going to go into all the details of Inspired Hygiene now. Again, I said we'll do that on a later episode. But in brief, we do have the unique opportunity to really look deeply into the hygiene department of a lot of practices across the U.S. We've worked with a few practices in Canada as well, but we have been in, I think, 45 states in the U.S. So we've in rural practices and urban practices and suburban practices and small and group practices and DSOs, and just a lot of different views into different ways that dentistry runs. And I often say, we are more the same than we are different. And yes, there are specific things that makes each practice unique. Most of these challenges are very common across the board in any type of practice. The other piece is that we've done thousands of virtual chart audits. We have observed thousands of hygienists working in their practice on a day-to-day basis. All of us in Inspired Hygiene have direct dental experience. Most of us are hygienists. We have had the opportunity to do a lot of truth talk with practice owners and teams, give a little tough love over the last 20 years. And we've looked really very deeply into the clinical and business wins that they've been able to achieve, and also some of the misses that come along the way. And that is just part of the game, right? That is just part of it. It's part of growing. And I'll say that we don't just help facilitate creating clinical standards and processes in there and communication processes, but we really do hold teams and practice owners' hands as they are implementing what can sometimes be significant changes. And it might just be a tweak of, hey, we're going to start recommending something other than a prophy. At this there's a small difference in what we're seeing in the patient that's going to make us recommend treatment. It might be a seemingly small difference in that diagnostic threshold. However, what comes with it is so much mental and mindset work. And so we've had that opportunity to really hold their hands while hygienists respectfully confront their dentists about backing up their hygiene treatment recommendations. And we've held their hands while dentists have really taken a stand for themselves, for their team and their patients in really setting much higher standards of care than they've had in the past. And really, really standing up for that, maybe when their hygiene team isn't following those standards. So we've been able to be in these, I would say, very transformational and impactful points with dental teams. And dental teams are, obviously a very close-knit group, and there's a lot of dynamics and relationship dynamics that happen in that type of environment that is very important to be, as a coach and consultant, to be really sensitive to that and to honor what has been built in this practice, from a patient relationship, from a community relationship standpoint, and from that team standpoint. And so there is as much personal growth and mindset work that's done in our coaching engagements as there is clinical skill building. And we've seen a lot, and it is all so rewarding. So that is just a little bit about our perspective and what we've been able to see. So let's talk a bit now about reality. I was just listening to a podcast by my good friend, Perrin Desports. I know some of you probably know Perrin. He has been in some really, again, unique positions in our industry for 20, 30 years now. And his podcast is called Next Level Executive. So we'll make sure that you, have a way to connect with that. But there's an episode that he released on May 8th in 2025, and he quoted Jack Welch. Jack Welch was the CEO of General Electric, was just seen as a business icon for transforming this massive company for many, many years. And the quote that Perrin shared was, "Face reality as it is, not as it was or as you wish it would be." And I think that's really where we need to be in dentistry right now, is really facing the reality of where we are right now. And there are some facts in the reality, and there's also a heck of a lot of emotion that is swirling around us right now, with regards to the future of the dental hygiene profession and the future of dental hygienists I would say in dental practices as well. And it's really scary for some. Some feel like, hey, it's time for a revolution here. And so let's talk about what some of these new realities are. And then let's look at how we can bring some light into some of these new realities, how some of this might actually work well for us in the long run. And over the next few episodes in this first season, we're going to be hitting some of these hot topics and digging into these a little bit more, into things like staffing and retention of your team. We're going to be talking some about hygiene compensation. That's a really hot topic right now. And also just scheduling and hygiene service mix. Those really, I feel like, are the key things that you've really got to look at right now to really optimize and set a strong foundation for a thriving hygiene department going forward in the next 1 to 10 years. So let's talk right off the bat. Let's just address hygiene wages. So the new reality is that they're at a much higher level across the board and than they were pre-pandemic, and they're likely going to stay that way. If you are paying your hygienist significantly more than you were paying them 5 years ago, and the level of care and services in your hygiene department hasn't changed, it will be very difficult to see a profitable hygiene department. We'll dig into what that profitability point means, what that is. I think this is a really, really important point for hygienists to understand as well. And that's my hope in this podcast, is to also give the hygienist a bit of a behind the curtain look and an understanding of the business side of the dental practice, but also of the dental hygiene department. And some of that is going to be really welcomed, I know, and some of it is going to be a bit of a challenge in just kind of understanding and assuming some of that responsibility for that, the business viability of the hygiene department from a hygienist standpoint. I would say the next reality is as dental practice owners and leaders, You must be competitive with flexibility and benefits to attract team, regardless of their position. I believe that one of the layers of this onion with this staffing crisis, and I saw that in a recent dental economics and Levin Group survey, is I believe it said 95% of the practices that responded to the survey said that staffing was extremely challenging, and their take on that was if 95% are saying that, then it's a crisis. And I will say that our clients and beginning to see more settling of hygiene departments with our clients, like finally having a full, complement of hygiene talent and really feeling good about who's on their team. We're seeing that increase over the last year, which is helpful. But then right along with that, I spoke with a long-term client yesterday, and very, very stable hygiene team. And they've lost one hygienist to a long commute, right? Just deciding for lifestyle, they need to get something that's less of a commute. And then number two was a compensation, and this practice is offering an extremely competitive compensation package. So competitive with flexibility and benefits as well. Business owners are and industry leaders are putting out all kinds of solutions, and some of them are really ticking off the dental hygiene community. I know that is an understatement. And maybe they're short-term solutions, maybe they're long-term solutions. I think a lot remains to be seen. I tend to want to see things play out in the long term before I get really riled up about it. But I'm riled up in some other ways that I'll share with you in just a moment, where I think dental hygienists, now is the time to really take responsibility for our profession. And I do believe that I'm not specifically speaking about independent practice, but autonomy in governance of the hygiene profession. I think there does need to be some changes in that for sure. And I believe that some of the leaders in the dental hygiene organizations are moving in that direction. And I think that will be good for everyone, because it will require, if a dental hygienist, if a state has its own dental hygiene board, it's going to require dental hygiene as a whole to really take on a more, I would say, organized and responsive self-management. And I think that will ultimately be good for patients, for practice owners, and for hygienists. But what we're seeing is that leaders are putting out a lot of different potential solutions. And we're going to see a lot of change, I believe, in dental hygiene licensing, and dental assistant licensing over the next 5 years. So dental industry leaders, practice owners are coming up with a lot of different solutions and lobbying for a lot of different solutions. But here's the thing. Dental practice owners can't just sit back and wait for more hygienists. These dentists are responsible for the care of thousands of patients in their community. If you've got a two doctor practice, you've got probably 3,000-4,000 patients that consider you their dentist, and maybe more than that. So they're responsible for the care of those patients. They're responsible for the paychecks of their team members. They're responsible for the banknotes, for their facility, for their equipment. And this is often millions of dollars and of responsibility, not to mention professional responsibility and clinical responsibility for all these patients. So I've been saying this for years, that dentist owners are going to find solutions to this problem, and it may not include hygienists. And that is sad to me, and it is part of the reality. And we're seeing that play out now. We're seeing that play out with expanded duties. And I am not opposed to expanded duties for dental assistants. I'm a huge fan of dental assistants, and I believe that there's a way that dental hygienists and dental assistants could create a incredibly powerful team with an expanded function dental assistant or just a very confident, um, highly skilled dental hygienist as well. I think it could be a really great dream team if we're willing to look at it that way. They're going to find some solutions, and again, I think there are going to be continued licensing changes for both dental assistants and dental hygienists. And hygienists. Here's my word for you. Here's my soapbox. Is must differentiate yourself as a true healthcare practitioner. If you're performing prophy and bite wings only on 90% of the patients that you see, then from my viewpoint of what I have seen and how that plays out long term, that is not intentionally setting your patients up for success to connect their oral health with their overall health. And if you are resisting the continual path of learning that is in front of us, so that we are implementing new ways to care for patients, utilizing new technology, new ways to communicate with patients, if we are resisting that, then you're not presenting yourself as an open, skilled healthcare provider, and that is where you're at risk of being replaced. So if we look at assistants having the ability to scale. Hey, I know I went to dental hygiene school. I've performed at a very high level as a hygienist, as have many of my colleagues and the teams that we coach. I know what it takes, and it's way more than scaling. And I also observe a lot of hygienists that are just doing scaling. They're not doing all of those education pieces. They're not connecting the oral systemic link. They're not digging into the patient's medical history and helping them find connections. They're not trying to get to the root cause of inflammation and continued chronic inflammation. And so to the outside eye, right, we might know inside our heart of hearts, we might know what we did in school. We might know, all the layers of what we know. However, if we're not demonstrating that on the outside, to the outside eye, it's like they're just scaling. So let's train somebody else to do that. So what my inspiration is for you today is please really start opening your mind to growth, professional and personal growth, being open to change, being open to implementing new services, and being open to having a much deeper level of communication with your patients, being a much more sophisticated diagnostic partner with your dentist. And that is really what's going to set you apart. Another piece of our new reality is culture. Culture is a huge factor in employee retention. Do not ignore this part of your business. I was speaking with a dentist practice owner. Oh gosh, this has been probably 2021, 2022. And this is really at the beginning of this crisis, and, very low periodiagnosis in the practice, high prophy practice. And there were 3 hygienists in this practice, and 2 of the 3 hygienists had both given their notice within 2 weeks. And she asked me a question. She said, I keep hearing about culture, and is that really important? Do I really need to worry about that? And it just really took me aback, because this dentist had a clear evidence in the practice that culture is important. Now, that may not have been the reason why these hygienists left. It could have been there were now jobs available closer to their home or something like that. But my answer is yes. Yes, culture is a huge factor in employee retention, and it is a huge factor in attracting team members, because your current team members are going to tell their friends, whether they're in the dental industry or not, right? They might say, hey, I know you're working at an ophthalmology practice, but we have this amazing office here and we need somebody. Would you consider dental? So that is going to help with employee retention and attraction. And it's just going to make everybody's life better too, right? You're at work a lot. So why not have a fun, safe, open, happy environment that you're working in? That leads to the next piece of our new reality is always be marketing for new team members. Always be networking, whether that is, supporting local dental hygiene and the ADOMS, DPLN, their groups. That is Dental Practice Leaders Network. I'm probably not getting that right, but if you're not familiar with the American Association of Dental Office Management, check it out. They have local groups that are in areas. Support those groups, right? Send your team members there. Be active in your community. Be active on social media, more than just a stock image every week. Really highlight that culture, highlight your practice and the phenomenal things that you're doing in your practice right now, but always be marketing for team members. And do retention interviews. Regularly meet with your team, your current team, and really ask them, like, hey, how are things going? What are you really loving in the practice right now? What do you see as maybe your next step of growth in the practice? Or what do you see as the next step of growth in the hygiene department? And really listen. And when they bring things to you like that, be willing to at least hear them out and consider that. And if it's a big investment in a piece of equipment, there's nothing wrong with really, giving that task to the hygiene team to, like, show me why we should commit to this. What is going to be different? How are we going to get an ROI from this? Those are really great exercises for team members to need to be a part of, because it's really them making their case for whatever this investment is. But be open to those things, dentists and practice owners and practice leaders. Like, your teams have some really great ideas too. So listen to those, because there may just be a gem that'll solve a major issue. And I will say as well, dental team members are often very creative. They see the inner workings of things. They see how the schedule can be adjusted, or maybe a little flexed, or sometimes they'll come to you and say, hey, we're willing to work an extra hour one day a week to get this many patients in. So be open to those ideas that they share with you, but really just always be out there marketing and looking for great talent for your practice. Keep your website up to date. Have a careers tab on your website. Have videos on your website of your team and how much they enjoy working in your practice, because you can then link back to those things, and they're super, super powerful. Okay. So those are some of our new realities. And in the next coming episodes, we're going to dig in even deeper into some of those with our team. And then the next piece I would say is, how about let's find some light? How do we find some light in this new reality? So here's what I would say for dental leaders, practice owners, practice leaders: start shifting your thinking around investing in coaching, training, support. So a lot of you, if you're listening to this podcast, you have likely you do more CE than is required by your state licensing board. Likely you are implementing some next level services in your practice. You are likely ahead above, most in the dental industry if you're listening to these types of podcasts and you're wanting to learn and grow. So you also may likely have had a coach or some type of training in your practice at some point. I will say, in the past, how a lot of dentist owners approach coaching and training is, I need to get this team trained. I need someone to come in and help us really train these particular people that are working in my practice, because they're going to be here for a really long time. And we've got to get these systems down and get them just really, operating at a very high level. Part of the reality now is you're going to have more turnover in your team. Dental team tenure has dropped significantly over the last 5 years. You've seen more turnover. You've seen more changes in your team. So now what I would encourage you to do is, when you're investing in putting in place clear protocols, practices, and standards, you are investing in your practice. So yes, those individuals are going to be the benefactors of that, and they are going to implement and they are going to integrate those protocols and those processes on a day-to-day basis. And hey, here's the thing is, they're also adding that to their skill set, which makes them more marketable, right? And gives them more career experience. But instead of thinking around coaching and training on training individual people, because when you do that, then if somebody leaves, it's like, oh my gosh, I just invested all of this and now they're leaving and everything I invested is going with them. So start really shifting your mind towards you when you're engaging these types of services. You are focused on investing in your practice. Because when you're investing this in your practice, it is going to increase your practice value. When you have systems in place, it is going to make onboarding new team members easier because they come in and you have a dental hygiene standard of care that's written. You have you have an educational program that you've worked with Inspired Hygiene or someone else that you have access to, that you can have your new team member sit down and say, go through this CE program. This is going to tell you exactly how our perio program works. And it's going to make it easier to onboard them, and it creates continuity of care. The other thing that is helpful is when you do have guest hygienists or temp hygienists come in, if you have that written standard of care, you can create a little cheat sheet on that and say, here's when our patients move from a prophy into periotherapy. And they're going to walk in and be like, oh my gosh, this is great. Like, I actually have a guide here, right? That's what we're hoping. So that's number one is that shift in your mindset around, hey, I'm actually investing in my practice when I'm getting coaching and training is actually going to create more value for your practice in the long run, rather than thinking about, I'm just training this group of people, of individuals that may be in my practice forever, or they might be here for a year. Hygienists, this is an opportunity, as I stated before, for you to really take stock of where you are on a scale of 1 to 10 compared to the scope of your license. So, if you're at a 10, that means you are doing everything that you are legally allowed to do and you're under your license. Okay. So for example, in North Carolina here, a few years ago, local anesthesia was passed. I know we're one of the last states, but hallelujah, it finally happened. And I am so grateful for the hygienists and the legislators that moved that through. If you've said, yeah, I'm not going to go get my local anesthesia license, then you're not working at the top of your potential of your license. Okay. So really maybe give yourself a score. Where are you on that, right? Are you placing, and utilizing all the products and services that you could as a hygienist? And maybe you're not sure, right? What's available there. And that's fair. This podcast will be a great place for you to get some info on that. And I'm sure you're in other hygiene groups that can share things like that too. Like, ask the questions, what are services other than prophy and scaling, root planning, and perio maintenance that we should be offering in a proactive, like, modern hygiene department? You'll get a lot of answers there. You as a hygienist can be a shining example of what that looks like, of what working at the top of your license looks like. And I had a really great example. I was reminded of this this week, actually. That position of being that hygienist in the practice that is constantly like growing and open to change and opening to trying new things and implementing things and having conversations with patients that are out of their comfort zone, your position becomes invaluable, and you just become such a shining light in that practice that can mentor others. And so I was speaking with a client recently, large group practice, and they're looking at how they can adapt their hygiene comp plan to be more attractive to new hygienists that are coming in, because they've had a bit of a turnover with a couple hygienists in their hygiene team. And what they said was, everything that we're considering, we have to run it to the filter of our top, like, lead hygienist. Is it going to help them make even more money? So they value this individual so much that they want to run everything through that filter when they're looking at their hygiene comp plan, because they want to reward the open-mindedness, the willingness to adopt new things, the willingness to be positive light in the practice. They want to reward that. And so you can be in a very a great position, and don't use that position as one of power and manipulation, right? Use that in a position of service and of partnership, because that long-term will create a much better long-term career path. I want to say this to all parties that might be listening, because I know we have dental practice owners, we have hygienists, we have practice managers, we might have hygiene directors and lead hygienists listening to this podcast. Is you are not held hostage, none of you. You all are at choice. So, please do not tolerate toxic behavior, because very often what happens is you're afraid that if you let that person go, that you're not going to be able to replace them. But what often happens is a really great team member leaves before they do. And then you're really in a bind. So, just remember, if you have that team member that is constantly resistant, is stirring up drama in the practice, whatever it might be, if you keep them, then there's no room for that new fantastic team member to come in and help you reset that culture. And it has an effect on the entire team. And I stated before, but I believe there are a lot of ways that dental assistants and dental hygienists can really work and sync together and make that a really, really beautiful thing. So in the intro, I shared that each season, we're going to do this in seasons, we're going to focus on one powerful topic. And we're really going to break it down, give you some takeaways. And so this season is all about these hot topics, the things that are really on your mind that you're like, hey, somebody needs to address this right now. We're going to give you our perspective on it. We don't have all the answers, right, to everything, but we've seen a lot. We've seen some of the things that you might want to look out for as you're trying to solve these things in your practice, and hopefully give you some ideas. You also heard me mention that, we want to make sure that whatever we're implementing creates a win for patients. It creates a win for your team, and it also creates a win for the practice. And that's what we call the triple win. And that really is our filter, right, for how we move things through from inspired hygiene to our clients. What we teach, how we coach them is this going to create a win for all parties? So what can you do right now? You're going to see a link in the show notes of how to download our 17 tips to attracting a hygienist to your practice. So even if you're not hiring a hygienist right now, or even if you're hiring for another role, I encourage you to grab this, because there are several things that you'll see that you could be doing to increase your retention, and also increase your chances of success, things you can be doing now to set yourself up to be in a better position when you do need to hire. So I'm going to encourage you to go grab that. And as always, we'd love to help you transform your hygiene department. So just go to inspiredhygiene.com and check us out. Would love to chat with you and just see how we can help. And can't wait to see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Inspired Hygiene Podcast. We hope you got a ton of value and some things that you can really take away and implement now. So as always, we invite you, if we can help you in any way to optimize your hygiene department, head on over to inspiredhygiene.com. And as always, stay inspired.